Stop. Before you start hiring, watch this video. It's going to save you 6 months of pain and a whole load of money. My name's Konstantin Slavovsky. I've built and sold 2 businesses, interviewed over 12,000 candidates in my career, made over 1,000 hires across 6 continents, and today I'm going to share with you the 5 lessons I've learned about making the right hires for your business so you can avoid those costly hiring mistakes that plague businesses around the world. In fact, did you know that 46% of hires fail within just 18 months of starting in a job? And the cost of replacing those hires within your business ranges between 2 and 20 times the annual salary of the person you are replacing. It is not just about the salary, it is also about the time, the productivity, the impact on other team members, the higher probability of losing other employees to the fallout from making the wrong hire. Hiring is superbly important for your business, for its stability, for its growth, and for its future. This is why it is not something that we should be gambling on. And yet, unfortunately, most leaders never take the time to learn how to hire, never take the time to master the skill of hiring and interviewing people. So today I'm going to share with you the 5 lessons I've learned about hiring that will enable you to make better, more informed hiring decisions for your business so that you do not have to suffer through the pain and anguish of making the wrong hires. Lesson number 1, never skip clarity. I know that as a leader, it is very exciting to be in a position to hire someone, to add force to your team. And I've been there myself. I remember the first person I got to hire into my business. And the truth is, at that point, excitement often gets to us and we simply rush to put out a job ad and get candidates in. But please, stop yourself at this point. Before you even start hiring, before you start speaking to candidates, before you post a job ad, take a moment to define what success in the job looks like. What is the actual mission? What is the purpose of the job that you are hiring for? Why does it even exist in your business? These are very important questions that you need to be clear about before you even go to market. But it doesn't stop there, because you see, once you've identified what is the purpose of the job, what is the mission that you are hiring for, you then need to break this down into outcomes. How will you measure success? What does success look like in this job in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from when the person starts? How will you measure that success? How will you hold that person accountable for delivering on that success? Once you have identified what success looks like within your business, who will be able to successfully deliver those outcomes for your business? How will this person behave? How will they operate? What are the competencies that they need to bring into your team, into your organization, into your business in order to be successful? This is what I call the hiring blueprint. And in fact, I built an AI that enables you as a leader to define this, to define the mission, the outcomes, and the competencies that determine success within your team. Once you have done this, you can then start to think about how can you attract those people? How can you assess those people? How can you actually bring those people into a conversation with you? Which brings us neatly to the second lesson. Avoid urgency bias. Now, I am not someone who is particularly patient. And when I have the opportunity to hire someone, urgency bias kicks in. I want to make hires and I want to make hires fast. When we're hiring, usually the pressure is on. The hire is urgent. But this is also when things get rushed. Many leaders that I have worked with simply speak to 2 or 3 candidates and then decide that they fit a few of the metrics, a few of the skills, a few of the competencies that they require for the job, and they decide, let's go for it, let's hire. You hired under pressure. Urgency bias took over, and you decided to make a hiring decision based on convenience rather than competence. And this leads to those costly mishires that I was speaking about earlier. Nearly half of all hiring decisions fail within just 18 months. And this is something that costs businesses not only time, but also money, as well as the fallout among the team. The fact that someone leaves your business increases the probability that other team members will also leave. This is a significant business risk that you need to take into consideration. And ask yourself that if you don't have the time to get hiring right, when will you have the time to do it again? And talking of getting hiring right, let's move on to lesson number 3. Use structured interviews. When I began hiring for my business, I actually depended on my gut, on my instincts to make hiring decisions. And let me tell you, that did not work out well. Half the hiring decisions that I was making would fail on the job. And again, I wasn't hiring bad people. I was just hiring people that I liked, that I would enjoy working with, but who were not able to deliver in the business, in the job that I hired them to do. And this was simply because my conversations were unstructured. I was sitting down for a coffee chat with them, rather than for a deep assessment of their ability to deliver on the mission, on the outcomes over the short, mid, and long term, as well as have the competencies and exhibit the behaviors that would enable them to be actually successful in my business. I remember once I brought in someone who was a fantastic salesperson from a large corporate environment. But I was running a mid-sized company without the sales support functions that this person got used to in a large corporation. They found it very difficult to actually deliver in the job within the context of my business. Now, were they a good person? Yes, they were a fantastic person. They were just not the right person for my organization and what I needed them to do. And this is precisely what I mean. Use structured interviews that tie back to the mission, the outcomes, and the competencies that you need for someone to be successful in your business. Without that, you are dead in the water. You are making hires and setting them up for failure within your business. With that in mind, let's talk about lesson number 4. The cost of a bad hire is more than the salary. You see, the cost of a replacement hire ranges between 2 and 20 times the annual salary of the person you are replacing in white-collar jobs. In a blue-collar position, this is 30% of annual salary. But it's not just the salary that a bad hire impacts. It is also the impact on the time that it takes to make that replacement. The fact that someone leaves your organization means that your existing team needs to cover that gap. It also means that it impacts you personally because you are no longer able to have the level of leverage that you need to run your business. Bad hires have tremendous knock-on effects on your ability to deliver. Bad hires slow your growth. They slow your progress, not only as a business or a team, but also as an individual. You as a leader will need to step in to fill that gap. You as a leader need to deal with the fallout from making that bad hire. This is also why it is so important to take the time when you're hiring to define who it is that you need for your business and get it right the first time. That old adage of hire slow and fire fast, well, how about we learn to hire right so we don't have to fire at all? That is what building a business is about. And until I learned that lesson, and it took me a moment, I kept making the wrong hiring decisions. However, once I got it right, I was able to scale my business to the point where it became an interesting acquisition target for much larger companies. And this was a tremendous opportunity for me personally, as well as the business. But that's a story for another time. For now, let's move on to lesson number 5. Don't ignore culture fit. And in case you're hearing any snoring in the background right now, that is Wilbur having a snooze in the afternoon. Culture fit is one of those terms that is often thrown around businesses without a clear definition. It's often little more than a vibe check or something we use to cover our own inherent biases. But how do we hire for culture fit? Well, earlier in this video, I mentioned competencies, and this is the sets of behaviors, operating styles that would enable someone to be successful within our business, within the context of our organization, our team. And this actually brings us to the topic of competencies, which I touched on earlier in this video. You see, competencies define how someone operates. How do they take ownership? How do they act as a team player? How do they raise the bar within an organization? And what works for a company like Google or for Amazon may not be right for you if you are a smaller organization based in a different geography with a very different culture. Now, this makes me think back to when I hired my first marketing manager. Now, this person was fantastic. This lady came in from a large organization, had proven herself as someone who can run social media, who can run ad campaigns, who can run large budget marketing organizations. Unfortunately, I was not a large budget marketing organization. In fact, I didn't even have a marketing strategy in place to speak of. And this person came in and found herself in an environment that she was not able to actually be successful in. Her experience operated within a much larger scale organization, with a much larger team and definitely much larger budgets. As a result of this, she was not the right fit and left the business within just a few months. This was an incredibly painful experience for me as a business, not only because of the salary, but also because of the fallout. It did, however, teach me a very important lesson. Hire for culture fit and hire for context. And this is something that you need to do in order to get hiring right. Otherwise, you will be cycling through people. And as we already know, all business is people business. And the people that we bring on either leverage our success or leverage our failure. So if you are hiring, take a pause. Stop yourself from rushing into making any people decisions without first defining what success looks like. Use these 5 guardrails to save yourself months of anguish and pain and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in costs. And if this resonates, hit subscribe, hit like, and check out my next video linked here. See you there.